Good day everyone. So obviously Hoyoverse has now confirmed that there will not be endgame content in Genshin Impact, and as shell-shocked as a lot of us were, we have to accept this and finally move forward. So this is what this video is about, as well as talking a bit about the idea of character creep, which is a concept that we haven't really talked about. This is very different from power creep, so stay tuned to find out about that. Now, when it comes to the way forward, there's a couple of things we need to sort of take into account. So obviously for me, as a sort of enthusiast content creator that does this as a hobby, not much will really change practically. So I mean, I'm still going to log in into Genshin, play the story and so on. But the big thing that is going to change is I'm not going to cover as many characters as I sort of did in the past, and I'm not going to cover characters that have been underrated by the community. For instance, like Kuki Shinobu, like Yamiko, Shenhe, and in particular the most notable achievement on my channel at showing people how to play with Kokomi, and doing so from an F2P and from a whale perspective. It certainly has been a lot of fun, and there will still be a lot of Kokomi content, so don't you worry, I'll definitely try and throw some stuff together. But from my perspective, I'm not willing to pay any more money for characters in Genshin Impact, with the only exception being the Archons, because they are really like sort of kind of premium units and so on. But for new characters that are going to come out in the future, if I lose the 50-50, I'll definitely post it, and I want everyone to see how horrible the 50-50 is. And if I do, without spending money, win the 50-50, I won't show the 50-50, but then we'll just sort of take a bit of a look at the character. Other than that, we'll just do sort of the trial runs and see if we can generalize some of the gameplay mechanics and things we can observe from the trial run. But that's going to be it for characters. I mean, yeah, I know it's like kind of disappointing, but it's going to be what it is. As regards the background footage, well, expect to see more of this casual type of content. I do know that a lot of people either watch the full Spiral Abyss run, or they sort of click off on like the first 30 seconds whenever I do Spiral Abyss runs. So for me, once I really looked into the analytics on the channel, it definitely does seem that not a lot of people really care about the sorts of runs and the animation cancels and the high level technique that I do sort of showcase, whether it's with F2P units or like C6 R5 units. So from my perspective, do expect less combat related content, unless of course there's some event or there's some really cool limited time combat event that Hoyoverse sort of gives, which is going to be quite awesome. So yeah, from my perspective, not that much changes, except that my long-term plans for Genshin and so on is going to be that I'll most likely play less on both accounts, and I will be migrating to, and I'll still see whether Overwatch or Honkai could be a suitable side game to sort of play and so on. Honkai definitely becoming a lot better as I understand more and more finally of the game. The story is still a mess, so it's whatever. Right, so let's talk a bit about the big problem that's in Genshin Impact, and this is the second half of the video, of course, character creep. Now, with character creep, what I mean is that Genshin Impact in and of itself is giving or is expanding its roster of characters, and a big problem of this is that the more and more characters you have, the more diluted your experience becomes with the characters that you do have in your party. In other words, if you think of a very simple example, when we got Ganyu, like way back last year in 2021, we obviously had like the Ganyu story quest and so on, and the question now is, but where's Act 2 of the Ganyu story quest? Where is the Ganyu skin? Where are the extra Ganyu voice signs and so on? Where are the additional interactions that we can see with between Ganyu and, let's say, other characters in the game? Where is the Ganyu that I can put in the teapot that moves on her own, for instance? So you can see for a game that sort of says, for developers that say, you know, we focus on character type content, there's actually very little real character content, barring the very stock standard treatment that almost all the characters have. And this is a big problem, because the more and more characters we have, the harder and harder it's going to be to write everyone into the story. And hence, you know, if you really like a character, for instance, you guys know I absolutely love Kokomi. What I want as a player is content for my character, but I have this fear that the Kokomi content I'm going to get is going to be bundled in perhaps an event where there are going to be multiple interactions with other characters, so hence there's not going to be that much of a Kokomi only focus. And as such, I also think that the amount of effort to upgrade Kokomi with new hairstyles, new burst, alternative burst animations, voice lines and such is not really going to be there in the game. In other words, what I have now is all that I'm going to get. And I do think it's even more painful for people that are free to play players, because Hoyo seems to think that the more and more characters they can just throw at you, the more likely it is you're going to spend. But even if you have a lot of characters, you cannot possibly manage your time between all of the characters and, in a sense, enjoy all of them. This is what I mean by character creep. Hoyoverse pushes new and new characters, but that leaves out existing characters by the wayside, or at least diminishes the impact or the joy of actually having and fulfilling and playing with them. This is obviously a bigger problem for free-to-play players, because obviously with the limited amount of Primo Gems and the dreaded 50/50, the amount of characters that you can enjoy is limited, but because a larger pool is being added, you're stuck with playing with only the characters that you've got, and you don't have fresh content and that can enhance your gaming experience, because the fresh content is the new kid on the block, not the old kid that you sort of now have and that you're now sort of stuck with. It's definitely a very, very interesting thing. So this is why, once again, it doesn't make sense that Hoyo is not giving us end-game content, because if you have a proper end-game system, which is what most gacha games have and so on, what you can say to people is, okay, it's no problem that I don't have Kokomi, for instance, character content. At least I've got all of these game modes in which I can show you that, she's the top meta pick for a survival game mode. She's middle of the pack when it comes to, let's say, extended DPS output. This is the sort of thing that can still be useful, and being able to play with the same character in different sort of end-game combat modes would be so perfect for Genshin. But in the absence of that, we simply don't have enough character content to justify getting those new characters, and this is my big worry. This is what I think ultimately degrades the replayability value of Genshin Impact. And there's no amount of things like trading card games or Mario Maker or some of these other like little rhythm games that they sort of push as mini events that can really make up for it. Because if you really are serious about a Mario Maker or whatever, there are better games to do that in, unless you make it a permanent part of Genshin Impact and you sort of actively encourage, or you build in, let's say, character lore into some of these game modes. So for instance, if you have to design your own underwater stage in Watatsumi, it could be an event where it's like Kokomi themed, and then the next week you could have another one which is like a Yaimiko themed. Something like that could be so cool if they can integrate characters more frequently into all of their events. But knowing Hoyo, they're just not gonna do this, and ultimately this is what I mean. This is character creep, which is I think much worse than power creep, because Genshin Impact, when it comes to power creep, there's no real power creep in the game. The technical answer is because of certain fundamental limitations on the base values of characters and so on. So the only thing that then needs to be tuned are ability, talent levels and modifiers and so on. And I think the Genshin team generally does a good job of trying to balance those things with the different types of elements. But that's a technical discussion for another day. So yeah, in summary, press on, press forward, and try to enjoy as much of the characters that you have. And yeah, that's my perspective on it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.